Is insanity contagious? In school, I learned that many diseases that can affect the mind, but I never understood the horror someone might face when their very thoughts could be affected by something so out of their control. My name is Jacob Mason, and before it all started, I was an ER nurse just outside of Boston. I was used to hectic days, the sight of blood and even death, but nothing could compare to what I've seen since that one dire night. It was what would pass as a normal day in the ER, chaotic. A line of people needed to be seen. All the staff did their best to see to everyone where sorting them between the time of arrival and seriousness of their injuries. My eyes had long gotten used to the fluorescent light and the smell of sanitizer that filled every inch of the hospital. The waiting room was filled with the sound of low muttering and coughs by loud yelling and rushing to the staff that filled the rooms behind. A homeless man was rushed to the ambulance. He was young, unwashed, unshaved, and covered in self-inflicted knife wounds. The blade had been recovered by the police and he was already bleeding profusely before he reached the hospital. Still, the doctors worked all their magic to try to save this man's life. I was called over to assist, holding the struggling man still as the doctor tried to stop the bleeding in each wound, another nurse rushing towards us with donated blood. I looked onto my patient's eyes. He looked terrified. It was then that he started to violently cough blood. It splattered into the air and into my right eye. Another nurse wordlessly took my place as I rushed to the eye wash station to clean out the biohazard. I was at risk for a number of blood transmuted diseases, but that was always a risk the hospital was prepared for. I was not there when the man they brought in died. A Jane Doe. We could find no trace of his identity. That was all the information I was privileged to hear, but the rest was up to the police. I was used to coming and going to many patients, but he was someone I knew truly wish I know more about. I took an HIV test and had blood work done and checked for any other diseases. The news seemed positive. I seemed to have little less worry of had any sort of infection. However, within 24 hours, I was experiencing symptoms to something I am still unable to fully explain. I woke ready to face another long day when I noticed it. A blot of something in my right eye, like a single drop of black ink in the corner of my eye. It moved when I tried to focus on it, and when I looked, I could not see it in the mirror. Trying to wash it out failed to yield results. Before my shift started, I had a doctor who was a friend took a look at it, but he failed to see anything wrong. Soon I was wrapped up with another busy day and failed to follow up on it. I did not want to obstruct my vision, so I let the issue wait. It wasn't until that night that I started to worry something was truly wrong. It was after another busy day, and I waited on my bed for sleep to take me. My eyes were closed, half asleep. I could feel it, like worms crawling across my eyes, stretching, contracting and elongating to reach further and further across. I awoke in a panic, fumbled around to turn the light. It was then I could see it, reaching out of the black little dot at the corner of my eye, a tentacle-like growth now obstructing my sight. They staked across my pupil, making my view look like peeking through a fence. This time, I didn't hesitate. I reached back to the same ER I worked at. This time, a patient myself, I was granted no special favors. Sitting in an uncomfortable chair under fluorescent light with the familiar mumbling and coughing around me, I awaited. My discomfort soon turned to sharp pain. My eye felt like it was attacked by a red-hot needle. All I could do was cry out in pain as I covered it with my hand. Then I saw something in my eye. Something moved in a hazy darkness. It looked like faces in pain shifting a mass of flesh, each face trying to escape before being swallowed by the flesh and replaced with another. By the time the vision had stopped, I began to rush into the back to get it looked at. My eye forced open and carefully examined by a doctor. The pain was gone, replaced with a tedium of awkward questions and paperwork. I was in shock, unsure what I tell the doctor. They looked at my eye, saw more blood, but only ended up shaking their heads. I saw familiar eyes of pity and annoyance, the kind reserved to those with mental illness. I know what they were thinking. Hours passed as I waited for a specialist and an ultrasound. Meanwhile, I started to grow hopeless and anxious. I did not like being so out of control, to be the patient. After hours of waiting, a doctor sat me down and looked me in the eyes. He told me my initial tests looked good, and some other tests may take some time to process, that I should go home and rest. Before I could leave, he handed me a piece of paper with the name of a psychiatrist that could help me. I left the hospital feeling hopeless and drained. I called out of work and decided to rest as the doctor ordered. After drifting to sleep, I dreamt of a mass of flesh as dark as oil. They looked almost human, but wrong. Misshapen as if they were made of melted wax, the thing looked at me as if it just noticed my presence. It crept slowly towards me. I awoke in pain, sharp pain. My eyes felt like fire, and nothing I did could ease it. Painkillers were useless. The pain would occasionally subsided, just long enough for me to start to fall asleep, and once more then started again just as if I was about to pass out. I did not sleep at all that night. I did not sleep the next night as well, or the other one after. My days turned into a blur of pain, and sight had become harder to explain. As the blackness spread across my right eye, it looked as if a painting was ripped in half to reveal another painting underneath. The two paintings contrast against each other, but at the same time created a whole. I was losing my mind. I stopped even attempting to go to work. My test came back negative, and the doctor seemed more certain that it was a mental problem. Mental or not, the pain was real to me. Hopeless and wrapped in despair, I did something reckless. Auto-hallucinations. Before I started to call an ambulance, I know the dangers involving and would need aid as soon as possible. Taking a scalpel, I carefully cut out the orbit of my eye. I started like a surgeon, careful and precision, before pain and adrenaline turned my effort violent, cutting muscle and flesh without regards to which. Before I knew it, what was left of my eye was a thick soup, dripping out of the socket while leftover muscle tried in vain to hold the mass in. I passed out before the paramedics made it to my home. I woke in a dark hospital late at night, drifting in and out of consciousness. My hands bound to the rails as so I could no longer harm myself. I had succeeded. My right eye was black. I could live with one eye. The pain was gone, replaced by working pain-killing drugs. For the first time, I could sleep. I had won. However, I could feel something move. It pushed against the bandages that covered my eye. Finding an opening, something warm and slimy pushed out of the bandage like a popped pimple. It slid down my cheek. I tried to grab it, but my hands were still chained. It wormed its way down my shoulder, then my arm, and dropped onto the floor with a splat. I could not see in the dark as it vanished. My ordeal was over. My pain was gone, as was my vision. But I fear I let something out.